I think we're forgetting one thing, and welcome to the program today. Greg Wyshynski is on board, already in the chat. We're going to get to him in a couple of moments. I think we're losing sight of one very important thing here, Zach Phillips, if that is indeed your real name. He cross-checked someone in the face. I've heard a lot of talk since the suspension came out for both McDavid and Myers, sort of dancing around everything outside of the main issue, which is Connor McDavid cross-checked someone in the face at the end of it. There's been a lot of, whether it's ex-players like Chris Pronger commenting on, "Attaboy, that's the way we used to do it back in my day, back when I played for Hartford, St. Louis, Edmonton, Philadelphia, wherever else I played, Anaheim." To fans who are saying, well, it never would have happened. Actually, a former NHLer is saying this as well. Never would have happened if the officials were doing their job. Are we losing sight of the fact that Connor McDavid cross-checked Connor Garland in the face? After, and we mentioned this on the program yesterday, two distinguished referees in the game, Chris Lee, Wes McCauley, missed a holding penalty. Completely did. Now, part of the... Oh, by the way, nice Dodgers hat. Are you like trolling Blue Jays fans? This is a complete troll job by you?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's how I'm interpreting it. Although I am auditioning now for new teams. I think I've had it with the Jays. My first job ever was selling hot dogs for Versa Foods at Exhibition Stadium, but I think I'm done with the Jays now. We can get into that another time.
Didn't know that.
So part of the conversation that we heard last night, bleeding into today, and we'll get Greg Wyshynski's thoughts on this in a couple of moments, was the idea that the NHL needs to protect its stars. In what other game would this be allowed? Don't call penalties against people that attack Connor McDavid. Do we have the board handy? Do we have the Family Feud board handy here? The survey says board. Going back to when Connor McDavid started in the NHL, this is all public information. This isn't like these secret numbers that have been discovered by Zach Phillips here. This is all public information. Going back to 2015, when Connor McDavid started in the NHL, nobody has drawn more penalties than Connor McDavid. Now, he's in some interesting company. Connor McDavid, number 1, 344 penalties drawn. Tom Wilson, number 2. Brad Marchand, number 3. Nazem Kadri, number 4. Matthew Tkachuk, number 5, interesting company. And then Nathan McKinnon, David Pastrnak, Garnet Hathaway, Brady Tkachuk, and Jeff Skinner.
Of course.
So for now, are those numbers down this year for Connor McDavid? Yes. But can we please pump the brakes a little bit on they're not taking care of Connor McDavid out there? Like, this isn't the 80s when Semenko and McSorley and Don Jackson and Kevin McClelland ran shotgun and made sure that everything around Wayne Gretzky was nerfed or bubble wrapped. Those days are gone. We're going to talk plenty about this. We're not going to spend the whole show talking about it. Everything's been on fire ever since. Vancouver's playing tonight. We know all about the rematch that's on the horizon. Myers won't be in there. McDavid won't be in there. I do wonder if that's one of those games where we see an unexpected out-of-nowhere line brawl at the opening faceoff, just because of the animosity and heat between these two teams, as you smile to yourself, Zach.
Yeah.
Anyhow, coming up on the show today, time for Daily Outlines, presented by FanDuel, North America's #1 sportsbook app provider. Our good friends, here's what we have for you today. Starting off with suspension fallout. So we've moved past the incident. We've moved past the suspension. Now it's all about the hyperbole and the commentary. We're going to get into all of it with Wish here in a couple of seconds. After all, it's Tuesday. So we spend Tuesdays with a good friend, Greg Wyshynski, and redo MVSW, a podcast near and dear to my heart and Greg's heart, and we hope it's near and dear to your heart as well. Also, JT Miller. That saga continues. Vancouver is playing tonight, and as of right now, 3:05 p.m. Eastern. JT Miller is still a member of the Vancouver Canucks. We'll talk about him a little bit later on here on the broadcast. We'll talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs and Tampa Bay Lightning last night on Morning Cup of Hockey. The guys today showed what's going to be what really is a tough power play to beat, highlighted by a great behind-the-back pass by Nikita Kucherov and 2-1 touches. It's just going to be too tough to try to shut down. But I want to spend a little bit of time talking about not necessarily that game, but talking about Mitch Marner, who's trending towards, the best season of his career and doing it at a time where he's poised to become an unrestricted free agent in July. Capitals Cup tonight, so we'll talk about Washington, and we'll talk about the Ottawa Senators. They go head-to-head this evening, one of 8 games on the go around the NHL. Also up for grabs, we're going to have a lot of fun with Clayton Keller's face. The worst one that I think I ever saw was Ian LaPerriere when he blocked a Paul Martin shot in the face, New Jersey, Philadelphia. And then Flyers fans made an incredible T-shirt about it. That might have been my favorites. That's up for grabs here. Thanks for joining us, whether you're listening on the podcast, whether you're watching live on YouTube, whether you're in the chat or not. We thank you for your participation. And with that, we bring in Greg Wyshynski from ESPN. Time for MVSW all over again. Wish, how are you? Are we losing sight of the fact that, dramatic pause, Connor McDavid cross-checked Connor Garland in the face on Hockey Night in Canada, on Hockey Day in Canada? That was a closing sequence of Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday. Are we losing sight of the fact that as we dance around everything around this incident, at the end of it, McDavid cross-checked the guy in the face?
First off, I was pretty convinced there'd be another reason you were going to give up your Jays fandom. Rogers! Oh, sorry. Oh, it must be a speck of dust in here somewhere. Listen,
it's called Skydome. It's called Skydome. It's called Skydome. It's called Skydome.
I understand. I understand. There's something you've missed in that stat you put up about McDavid before, and it is absolutely true that he has drawn more penalties than any other player since his rookie season.
Yeah.
When you go inside the numbers, and Zach, if you wanted to put it back up again, it's up to you. If you go inside the numbers, McDavid's penalties drawn per 60 minutes is 1.38 during that span. That's 10th among players with at least 300 games to their career, and that's averaging 15 per minutes per night. That's 10th. So it's a little bit of a deception on your part to say that he's number one.
No,
when if you go by the rates, he is 10th.
I've always maintained, and this has been true of, and you remember the first time that I first talked to you about Connor McDavid so many years ago.
Oh my God, you were first.
Well, I don't like to brag, but say it again.
Much like John Buccigross is the first guy to ever say that Ovechkin could break Gretzky's record. Yeah. You canonically were the first person to ever mention Connor McDavid's name on a well-listened to hockey podcast.
So, and that's only because, now the CEO of the Edmonton Oilers, when he was an agent, Jeff Jackson, used to drag me out to games to watch Connor McDavid because he was trying to recruit him. So that's how I got to know Connor McDavid. But I've always maintained one of the reasons why it's tough to take penalties against Connor McDavid, you can't catch him. Like you look at all those other players that are on that list, very catchable. Very, very catchable players. If you want,
doesn't have Connor McDavid's wheels. Is that
actually Tom Wilson's actually a really good skater? But I mean, if you want to, I don't know, if you want to catch Matthew Tkachuk. First of all, Matthew Tkachuk's not too shy about being caught. Matthew Tkachuk is happy to be engaged in whatever you want to engage in at any time in any of the 3 zones. But the only point that I was trying to make there is no one's I don't think officials are looking the other way on Connor McDavid and say this is 1986 Stanley Cup final. You fight through the neutral zone. You fight through that slash and that hook and that elbow and that butt end. That's the way we do it here. Oh yeah, you got a hook in your hip. You bend your knees, son. You don't go sprawling all over the ice trying to get a minor penalty. That was my only point. Is let's just park the conversation about how it's open season on Connor McDavid, and if I can just throw another log on the fire here, and I know what I'm doing when I do this. This is just I just infuriate Oilers fans. I guess I don't remember Oilers fans complaining about the officiating when they missed the elbow to the head of Marcus Johansson last week from Connor McDavid.
So. I know you want to tie a bow around the McDavid referees argument, but let me take the bow off the gift for 1 second and say something's changed this season. Okay.
Okay.
Connor McDavid in every season of his NHL career has averaged more than one penalty per 60 minutes drawn. Okay. This season, he's at 0.89. That ranks him, again, amongst players that play at least 15 minutes a night. Yeah. That ranks him outside of the top 50 as far as penalties drawn per 60 minutes. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know why it's happening.
I don't know what that means either.
He didn't accept the Conn Smythe on the ice. I don't know. But there's something going on here where Connor's not getting the same kind of calls he's gotten in the past. Averages will probably average out by the end of the season. But if you are someone who believes, as the Oilers clearly believe, as Connor's camp clearly believes, that he does not get the same benefit of the doubt that a player of his stature should, something's happened this year where the numbers have dropped.
You know what the interesting part about that is now that this is part of the conversation, and Bob Stauffer went banana sandwich last night.
No,
Bob had an epic one last night. You can find it. You can search it out. It is fantastic, right? It's sports, right? It's beautiful. Like, I don't get this mad when I vote, damn it. Like that's what it was. And listen, Bob's got the heft to do it and has the numbers behind him to do it as well. But the interesting thing about what's happening now, in some ways, and I made this point with Patrick Laine and the Columbus Blue Jackets, that by blasting the Blue Jackets, that actually did the Blue Jackets a favor. And you look at what's happened with the Columbus Blue Jackets since. Like, you give players something to rally around, they'll do it. I wonder now that this conversation is being had, it's past its initial news cycle, and it's still going, and it's still going to go until Connor McDavid comes back. And when McDavid comes back, he's going to go off for like 3 points a night. Like, that's just Connor McDavid. That's what he does, and he's going to help Canada win the Four Nations because of it. I do want to finish my point. I do wonder if this now draws attention to it, and all of a sudden now you better not go near Connor McDavid, and he's going to start getting the calls. We all know how these
let's
things
hope
work.
Because the numbers have fallen off this year. The suspension itself, I would have bet the house it was going to be 2 games. Like,
why?
Clearly, cross-check to the face is going to get you suspended. I agree with you on that. They're obviously not going to let Myers or McDavid play in the rematch on Thursday, so that gets you to 2 for both of them. And I thought that's where we would end up. I thought Myers might get 3 because he had more of a rap sheet than McDavid did. And frankly, his cross-check to the face of Bouchard, although I will agree with Myers, his argument in the hearing was that he tried to go for the chest and Bouchard's gloves kind of came up, and that's why it went to the face. It still was a cross-check delivered after the whistle, which I don't think is something the NHL... Yeah, that's the thing for me.
Hang on.
Myers.
That's okay. I want to go back to McDavid, but I think you nailed it on that one. I think 2, like, cross-check to the face, that is 2 games. It's been pretty much established with Matthews and Rasmus Dahlin, right? Matthews with no history, that's 2. Like, that's like the first one, boom, cross-check in the face, that's going to get you 2 games. For Tyler Myers, I thought it was going to be more for Myers because of, like, we look at Ridley Gregg and Morgan Riley, and that was 5. One of the big things was it happened after the whistle. I know a lot of Maple Leafs fans found something similar that would happen during the game. The Wayne Simmons incident was a big one, but the argument there was it happened during the course of play. Ridley Gregg takes a slap shot at an empty net and then gets chased down the ice to the boards by Morgan Riley well after the play is over, and then it's the cross-check to the head. That's going to be a beefy number because after the whistle and distance traveled to go, and there's plenty of time for Morgan Riley to make a different decision, and he didn't. I thought after the whistle was going to really ring up Tyler Myers. Like, I thought we were going to see 4s yesterday, to be honest with you. And I know you may say, both? Yeah, I did. I really did. And I thought that, I know the Leddy incident, like, that there is a significant amount of time between when he got Leddy with the headshot. Again, it wasn't a stick foul. And it wasn't. Now, and no, it wasn't. And now that you may look at it and say, okay, well, that's already washed out. The history doesn't wash out, but it doesn't act as an automatic significant multiplier as if 2 weeks ago he had another stick to the head incident. Like that's just
Right.
like, that's
And we
just
should-
how the Department
we
of
should
Player
say that
that's how the Department of Player Safety thinks. I'm not saying that that's what I
Right.
would have done, but that's how the Department of Player Safety thinks. And I got to say, they've been consistent with that. They really have. That's not arbitrary. It's not, Greg. It's not. They've been consistent with that one. Show me where they haven't.
Well, let's talk about consistency in a second. But to your point, I think people miss the fact that the Department of Player Safety, when it comes to repeat offenders, that's merely within a certain time frame.
Yes.
To deal with the punitive damages, to deal with the money that somebody might have to give up. That's when you see the repeat offender thing. But you're right, all that stuff stays on the ledger. Like all the Tyler Myers stuff is taken under consideration in suspending him. Now, I will take issue with consistency here. Okay, you mentioned, we have 2 incidents recently that both resulted in a 2-game suspension for what was a cross-check to the head. We had Austin Matthews, we had Carson Soucy in the playoffs.
Yep.
Who got 1 postseason game, which, if you know player safety math, basically means 2 regular season games.
Correct.
I don't understand the justification. I know that they're saying it's McDavid's previous suspension, and he got a fine as well during the COVID season for something on Kakimani. But like, I don't think there's a justification for 3. I just don't. I think it's a 2-game suspension. I don't see too much of a difference in the heat of the momentness between what McDavid did and what Matthews did. I don't know how you get to 3. I know that we got to 3, and I know that he's not appealing 3 because he knows essentially that the appeal is going to take 3 games.
Yeah.
And it goes to Bettman, who's not going to overturn player safety. But I don't know what the justification is to give him
the
3.
History. That's it.
For what is essentially something that's gotten 2 for a ton of other guys.
It's just the history. That's it. So Carson Soucy, you're right about I don't like it, but I'm going to ask Berkey about this on Friday because I think this was Berkey math going back to when he ran what we now know as the Department of Player Safety. That was Berkey's idea, and it's always happened that a 2-game suspension in the regular season is a 1-game suspension in the playoffs. To which I've always said, well, in overtime, then do we do 1-minute minors? Because there's only 5 minutes of overtime. Like by that logic, are we going to go with, well, hold on a second, you can't sit them down for 2 because it's only five minutes. We're not playing 20 minutes. Are we going to have 1-minute minors now? Anyway,
they'd call more penalties if that was the case.
Philosophical, probably would. It's funny too because Jay Woodcroft used to always call that 1-minute minors, like that when the Detroit Red Wings would do those pick plays that kind of look like penalties, but they're not. Like you can't justify a full 2, so they would say like, go do a 1-minute minor, go take a 1-minute minor, which means just pick someone. They're not going to call it. So the only reason that McDavid got the 3, I'm convinced, is the history. Like that's it. There's the 2 that was standard. Both are getting minimum 2. Both have history. So to me, that went to 3. And I really did wonder, considering it was heat of the moment, bad reaction to a missed minor penalty, I wondered if there was going to be another. But to be honest with you, I look at it, 3's fine. 3's fine for both.
It's not fine. It shouldn't be 3. It shouldn't be 3. There's no justification for 3.
I just told you there is because of history. History doesn't come into it. You just said
a guy. His previous previous infraction wasn't a stick foul.
No, it does. It wasn't a stick foul. I think would have made it even worse. Just look, he still has a wrap. He still has something on his wrap that is not getting wiped out. That is not getting wiped out ever. That is always what you don't have to like it. You don't have to like it, but that's they're. Yes, Greg. I'm not saying that you have to like it. I'm not saying you have to like it. I'm saying that is their rationale. That is how the Department of Player Safety works. You can not like it, and that's fine. There's some things about it that I don't like too. But all I'm trying to say is, if you're looking for like what's the rationale for it, that's their rationale for it. You can disagree with it and say you don't like it, but if we're looking for why this happens, that's why it happens. Now,
I understand why it happens. I disagree with it, but I think what we should say though, is that if Connor McDavid had taken his stick and slashed the living hell out of Connor Garland's leg, it's not 3. If he had punched him in the face, it's not 3.
Yep.
Where I will go with player safety on this is that he did do the one thing that's going to get you dinged pretty severely from the league, which is use your stick as a weapon. Yep. And that's the only way I'm going to justify 3 for them. But otherwise, I don't. It's 2.
Okay.
It was 2 for Matthews. It was 2 for Soucy. It should be 2 for McDavid.
So this argument is interesting. Let me get it off the McDavid page briefly for a second. And I want to, Zach, do you have the incident that we were talking about earlier on today? So let's go back, gentle Greg, and everyone in the chat, everyone watching, everyone listening. Let's go back to 1987. I remember this like it was yesterday. This is Rangers and Philadelphia Flyers. Okay, you've probably seen this one before. This is Dave Brown and Thomas Sandstrom. Cracked to the head. Okay, like that is, Sandstrom's not even looking. Dave Brown comes in, cross-check to the head. That's 1987.
Yeah.
That suspension was 15 games. Now, here's the point that I've always tried to make to people. The Department of Player Safety works in conjunction with the general managers every year and essentially say, how do you want us to mete out justice? Do you want 15 game suspensions like we saw in 1987 for cross checks to the head? Because if that was the standard, Greg, because you always hear it, oh, they're not protecting players, these suspensions need to be more, and you can say, okay, yeah, well, that's fine. What happens now if the opening call is 15 games on a cross check to the head, knowing that Connor McDavid could do the same thing, or Sidney Crosby could do the same thing? All of a sudden, because every general manager is faced with this, it's only a problem when your bull gets scored. But every manager knows, even my star players could do this. And
that's right. That's why the players
suspensions are so quote unquote low. Because managers will complain when it happens to them.
Players have never fought for that either.
No, they haven't.
Right?
They don't. They don't want that
because they know it could be them that gets rung up next time, or maybe even more importantly, the star player on their team could be that guy the next team. You're completely right. Like it's kind of a standoff that'll never be resolved. And I think that you're completely right in the sense that like fans are always asking for more justice, and they have to understand why there isn't longer suspensions, and it's because everyone has kind of agreed that's not what we want.
Remember when Shanahan in that preseason, when he first started, was throwing like nickels and dimes at everybody, and the managers went like, whoa,
But again, last thing I'll say about this, because I know we have a lot more to get to, but like you bring up Shanahan. First of all, I think the Department of Player Safety does an amazing job. I think more often than not, they get it right under the parameters we just spoke about. I think they take a lot of crap for the decisions that they make, but I think overall they do a pretty good job, and overall they're pretty consistent. I've covered this department since Shanahan started it, okay? And one of the things that we've always talked about with the Department of Player Safety is there is a subset of players in this league that need a good talking to. And there's a subset of players in this league that are the ones that constantly skirt the rules, play dangerously, play recklessly. And when it comes to the chance to throw the book at them, Matt Rempe, for example, you do it. Connor McDavid really one of those guys?
No, but there can't be a special carve out for Connor McDavid.
It could be carved out for guys that aren't that type of guy.
Like this is, and that's where history comes into it. Absolutely. And that's where, like, if you have a rap sheet that's, longer and longer and longer based on how long you've been in the league and how many things you've done, all of a sudden, if that's Matt Rempe doing that to Connor Garland, I assure you, it's not a 3-game suspension. That is much more significant. Not that this justifies any of it, but I will say this about the NHL, and you can say this is a good thing or a bad thing. This is right or wrong. Protect stars, keep stars in the game. I understand the argument. Gil Stein suspended players only had to serve their suspension on off days because they wanted to keep players in the lineup. That was a whopper of one. Anyhow, listen, the Richard riots were because Rocket Richard got suspended for hitting a linesman. Mm-hmm. Like this goes back. Like this isn't new. This isn't new at all.
And I'll also sympathize with the Department of Player Safety because they're essentially cleaning up the referee's mess. They're cleaning up Stephen Walcom's department's mess.
Missed call.
Connor Garland didn't get a holding penalty at the end of that game. He didn't get one. They were never going to call one. He's literally he's trying to win the Greco-Roman gold in the Summer Olympics against Connor McDavid on a scoring play at the end of the game, and he didn't even get a holding penalty for it.
I know.
So
it's
I
bad.
sympathize with player safety in this case, which is that what McDavid did is a result of the referees not doing their job, and they're two separate departments, and player safety had to clean up the referees' mess.
That is so. Okay, I'm glad you got us there. Because I think there's been a lot of, although more with fans, because fans generally tend to go after officials, and you know how much slack I cut officials. But even I can't look at that Saturday and say, "Well, Greg, what you're missing is like
it's game management, Greg."
It's boy, I heard some of those about it's because of you. This is what game management means because you can't call everything. You
earned that. You are the first one to say game management. Don't make the penalties. Yada yada yada. And you've earned the score to the fans for your protection of the zebras.
I had
more zebras than the Department of the Interior.
That's very good. I had someone on Twitter X today say that this suspension was because of me supporting game management by saying that you can't police every single look, you can't make calls on everything. If you just call the rule, but give me 60 minutes of penalties and 60 minutes of power plays. And that's always been my point. Okay, I'm getting off track here.
That'd be great for the Oilers, by the way.
For sure. Yeah, they'll take that one. I was saying this before he came on. This doesn't have a sort of Tom Wilson, Artemi Panarin vibe about it, but considering all the hatred, not just between the teams, but between the fan bases, the cities, the history, most recent, of course, in the playoffs, between Edmonton and Vancouver. Now, I'm not trying to start anything, Greg Wyshynski, but does this have opening face-off line brawl written on it?
It has the faint whiff of it if we're going to have one, but I think more than anything, it has much like your Panarin Wilson example, because then the subsequent games between those teams became kind of I'm gonna pop in and see what's going on. It's good to have a rivalry. It's good to have animosity. It's good to have controversy. We have a severe deficit of team rivalries you care about in this league right now. And I think between the postseason and this incident and proximity and division, we got ourselves something cooking here with Vancouver and Edmonton, and it feels great, doesn't it? Doesn't it feel great? Yeah. Doesn't it feel great to have something other than the Florida teams to care about in this league right now, insofar as team versus team rivalries?
Okay, can I grouse about the schedule then?
Please.
I hate when they heavy up what could be an obvious rivalry early in the season. Like, full well that something could happen between Edmonton and Vancouver, or Calgary and Vancouver, or Toronto and Montreal, or even Toronto and Buffalo. You know these things could happen. Tampa and Florida is the obvious one. Don't throw it away in November and December. Like I just cringe when I hear, it's, December 13th and we've just had a game that took 3 hours and these two teams hate each other and the closing montages. Well, too bad we won't be seeing this unless these two teams face off in the playoffs. Like, let's try to get these types of games where we think there could be some fireworks later on in the season, right?
I just love the playoffs. Steve Hatrapetsos, the guy who does the schedules for the NHL, is having to spin a billion plates. He's trying to figure out how to schedule a hockey game around 3 dates from a Korean boy band at some arena. And you're like, Steve, why are you putting the Vancouver Edmonton games so early?
What are you doing, Steve? And I know full well they heavy up Canadian games early. I get it. I'm just trying to have the perfect hockey season.
I don't. You and I might have been doing a show together or not when this was going on. But did we ever talk about the COVID era play 2 nights in the same city on the same weekend thing?
I'm surprised.
You loved it, right?
Who didn't? Who didn't? Listen, I'll tell you.
The NHL apparently.
Well, and I can't figure out why. Because it
Yeah.
makes more sense. It helps build rivalries. That's where you can hear, rivalries fuel the sport. Well, why are we separating all these teams? And why just play one, play two? Makes more sense economically. It's everybody
Economically, you
all
don't
of
fly the planes. It helps the environment. You'd figure all these things to be in favor of this thing, but they didn't follow through on it.
I was really surprised. I thought it was going to go more to a baseball style schedule. You're coming in to play Dallas 1, now you're going to play Dallas 2. Like that's just the way it's going to be. It just made too much sense. I don't know why they did. Like, who didn't look at, and I don't know why there aren't more home and homes. Like, home and homes, again, this is going to sound like we're both like the old men. Like, honestly, dude, like those home and home, I grew up with the Norris division, bud. And those home and homes, like take your pick, Chicago, St. Louis, Minnesota, Toronto, Detroit, any of them home and home. Oh yeah. Take the phone off the hook. Before cell phones.
The only argument that I heard, I remember at the time of them not wanting to do this anymore, was the idea of, you want to spread the wealth a little bit. You want to spread those games out.
No, you want to spread the hate. You don't want to spread the wealth.
There's a chance that a fan might buy tickets to 2 of those games if they're not back to back. Like it's a whole marketing thing. But as far as like the animosity goes and the other things we talked about, cost savings, all that other stuff, the wear and tear on an athlete's body to stay in the same city for 3 days versus having to fly back later in the season, all that played into the advantage of having those back-to-back weekend games or whatever. It would have been cool.
So Jake Miller, he brings up a good one in the chat, would also be good for traveling fan bases. 2 games definitely makes it worth your time and money for hotels, as opposed to
that's very true.
For one shot too. It's a great point.
Yeah, and it is interesting to think about like what would benefit traveling fan bases versus the other thing that happens in the league, which is a bunch of owners restricting their ticket sales to zip codes of their liking and doing everything they can to keep out those fans.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, it's
so dumb. As a kid who grew up going to Devil Ranger games, there is absolutely nothing better than invading fan bases. I know that our friends in Nashville always used to complain about all the Blackhawks fans and Red Wings fans that would get into those games, and you'd feel real terrible about having to sit in a sea of red, when you go see Nashville play. But to me, it's like that helped cut my teeth as a fan. Like the idea of you are defending your fortress against these marauding hordes that come to your arena. That's like such a great environment. And I don't know why teams were so adversarial to having the adversaries come to their buildings.
Yeah. Lindy Ruff had the line of the year this year when he talked about a game at the Key Bank against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he said, we've got to take the fans out of this one early.
That is a great line.
It's awesome. Lindy's got to have a sense of humor about what's going on this season. Okay, so off of that, you have anything else to add before I said we weren't going to talk about this all show, and here we are 33 minutes in. Anything more on McDavid Myers that you want to get into, or you just want to let those embers slowly
I mean, I think we've said all we're going to say about it.
All right.
I really thought it was going to be 2.
3 it is. Okay. Washington Capitals Stanley Cup chances. You've written recently at ESPN.com about the Washington Capitals, a team that continues to impress. Like, even in a little bit of a swoon, there are things in a Washington Capitals game that you look at and go, wow, Protas is playing great tonight. Or, Trevor Van Riemsdyk's really good. I never noticed Van Riemsdyk before. And have you noticed how good a season Jacob Chikrin is having? Man, he's going to get $7 million on the open market. What do you make of the Washington Capitals?
Well, they're better year over year. I mean, I think they're like top 3 offense and defense right now in the league, which is a tribute partially to their goaltending, but with Logan Thompson. I wrote about the Caps today on ESPN. I hope that people check it out. It's kind of a look inside of their retool at a time when the Blackhawks are terrible and the Penguins are delaying the inevitable. One of the other titans of the last 15 years, the Washington Capitals have found a way to retool around Ovechkin to the point where if you squint hard enough, you can kind of see what the post-Ovi era could look like. And there's 3 things I wanted to touch on real quick about that. The first is the Capitals GM, Chris Patrick, kind of said something that really struck me, which is that look at their acquisitions. Dubois, Chikrin, to a little lesser extent, Logan Thompson, but before that, Strome, Sandin. Like, these are players 26 and under. And he said, there's a lot of people around the league that don't believe you can trade for those kinds of players or acquire those kinds of players. And you just have to kind of jump on it when the opportunity arises. And a lot of people thought they were insane for Dubois with that contract. Chikrin has never been necessarily the guy who actualized his full talent. So maybe there's a little bit of buying low, but you have to give the Caps credit. Like the players that have been difference makers on this team are players that are all 27 and under and kind of come from other places. It's pretty impressive. The other thing too about the Caps. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say it's the power of the second chance. Like Glenn Sather was the master of this. Like, and people would look at Glenn and go, "Oh, it's the arrogance of Glenn Sather. Oh, just get this guy into my program and we could do this." Whether it's the Oilers or the Rangers, I mean, that was the arrogance of Slats. But it's no different than we're seeing here from Chris Patrick saying, like, "Get him here, get this guy here." Yeah. Now you're right; it helps when you have an all-world goaltender and all-world goaltending tandem. And it helps when you have Spencer Carberry, who knows half the team from when he coached them in Hershey. But look how many, look how many second/third chance players you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. How many times we look at Dylan Strome and go, "Is it ever going to happen? Is it ever going to happen for Dylan Strome, third overall pick? Is it ever going to work for him? Is he going to find a spot?" He did. It's worked great.
It has. The other thing is the identifying players who might benefit from a bigger spotlight. Van Riemsdyk is one of the guys that Patrick mentioned of I never realized this guy could do this. And then lo and behold, he's doing it for the Capitals. And the third thing, you mentioned Carberry, you mentioned Hershey. What a pipeline. Like if you look at the prospect pipeline rankings, the Capitals are not necessarily like in the top 10. But then you think about Ryan Leonard on the way. You think about Cole Hudson on the way. You think about the players that they have in Hershey right now. They have a geographic advantage of being able to get guys called up quickly. They have a geographic advantage of being able to manage that program and have executives go to Hershey, come back to DC. Like it's a great, easy trip to make. And they've been patient. And the other thing about it too, Marek, is like when you think about the plight of the Penguins and how bare that cupboard is for them over the years. The Washington Capitals have missed the playoffs twice since like 2008, I think it is. Yeah. And in that span, I think there's been 3 drafts where they didn't have a first-round pick. Like it's pretty remarkable how they've been able to populate Hershey and be patient with those players, and then gradually bring them up to the big team in a way that a team that has been that successful for 15 years should not be able to do.
Ethan Frank.
Yeah. Ethan Frank, too.
Ethan Frank, the fastest player in hockey, period. 2 calling cards, incredible shot and incredible wheels. If people watching or listening don't know what we're talking about here, you got to see this kid recently called up from Hershey, played at Western Michigan, been banging it out in the minors. His family owned a roller rink. And the kid grew up. I don't think he started skating until he was 9 years old. He was just happy to live on inline skates, and that's what he was going to do. And maybe that leads at that. Maybe that's why he has that wide stance when he skates. But like, here's all of a sudden, boom. Here, did he spend too much time in the minors? Probably not when you consider he's under the tutelage of Todd Nelson, who should probably be an NHL coach. But I've always mentioned about him. The problem with Todd Nelson is his teams go too far into the playoffs. They always go too deep into the playoffs. So when all the coaching interviews are being done, Todd's still coaching. And then he wins the Calder Cup, but it's like, okay, any jobs out there for me? No, they're all filled. But I got this cup.
But at the end of the day, like that's another thing the Capitals have talked about is like their young prospects play in big spots.
They do.
They play important games. They go on long playoff runs, and it informs their success at the higher level. I will be fascinated when I think Leonard's going to probably leave after the season. I don't know that for sure, but I think we could probably agree that's probably going to be the case.
Greg, can you pause? Can you pause for 1 second? Can you pause for a second?
Yeah, sure.
So I was there in Ottawa to watch the World Juniors. I'm not there to watch BC, right? Like I rely on other people for college hockey and being in the buildings and telling me what they see. That guy should be playing in the NHL today. Ryan Leonard should be an NHLer today, not next year. And that's my point. Like today.
I think he joins them. I think he's a late season post-trade deadline addition. What would be interesting though is you can count on one hand the number of players that have skipped over the Hershey incubation period to join the Capitals. Tom Wilson was one of them, and Leonard's probably another one. I mean, he's got some NCAA seasoning, but That kid is good. He's a
he's
leader, and he's going to make this team even better than it is right now. When if he joins them at the end of the season.
Okay, well, I'll bite.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wait, he didn't really say he is. I think he might have said last year he wanted to spend one more year in college. But yeah, he's on the way. And he's great.
So I wanted to make this point last week, and I didn't have time. So I want to make it with you and get your thoughts on it. Because you mentioned, jumping over Hershey just to go right to the NHL. And I've always maintained, more so with defensemen than forwards, everybody and goalies always do. I mean, this is the story of Buffalo trying to rush Devin Levi and go around the American Hockey League. And it's like, show me the goalie that's done that.
Yeah.
You need time in the American Hockey League. I always say that about every player outside of the Crosbys and McDavids and Ovechkins. When you look at that draft class of 2003, and Eric Stahl just had the number retired by Carolina, if you look at all those players, like we look at them now and it's like, what a draft. That was incredible. Look at all these players. It's Bergeron and Fleury and Stahl and go down the Weber, like go right down the list, like Getzlaf, Perry, Richards and Carter, like Parise, go right down the list. You know what helped them? The lockout in 2004. You know why? They were forced. They were forced to either go back to junior or play in the American League. There was no option for them to go in the NHL, right into the fire. And look how well that entire draft class did. We look back on it and just say, well, all those players were just great, I guess. And forget that all those guys were forced to spend one more year of development, either in the CHL for a lot of them, or college hockey, or in the American Hockey League. That's what they all have in common. And we look at that draft class and go, it's one of the best ever. And they all have in common, they spend time in the American League. They all do.
I'm going to clip this conversation and send it to Simone Nemec. I think you could probably use it seeing your soliloquy.
No, but hang on. I feel for Simone Nemec. First of all, I mean, listen, Jonathan Kovacevic, like that should be Nemec's spot, but Kovacevic has been incredible. Yeah. He's been incredible. He had what an off season for Tom Fitzgerald and Siegenthaler Nemec together. I mean, Anderson and Gavrikov in Los Angeles. To me, it's like they're fighting for who are the best shutdown pairs in the NHL. It's between those two, tremendous. But I understand that because don't forget. I mean, you know this. It was 5 minutes ago he was playing a 60-game season with the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah.
And now he's looking like, okay, I'm blocked by this guy. I'm blocked by this guy. Maybe even I'm blocked by Seamus Casey at this point.
He probably feels bad too because you could make the argument he was better than Luke Hughes last year. You could make that argument. Now, I think Luke's been incredible this year. He's played better defense than I thought he was capable of at this age this year. But I mean, if you're Nemec and you're just toiling in the AHL watching a guy that you probably outplayed last year get your shot, you're probably a little bit salty. I don't know. Let me talk about the Devs real quick. Okay. So they are struggling. They are not getting anything out of their bottom six scoring right now. But they're doing the same damn thing.
They need a third line center. They need a third line center. They need a third line center.
They do. But here's the thing.
They need a third line center.
Multi-season problem for this team. Giving up the first goal. They've done it in 27 of 49 games this year. Now they're 12-12-3 when it happens. So they do recover. They've got the offensive horses to do that.
Yeah.
But at some point, constantly playing from behind and constantly playing from a deficit, it catches up with you. And this is I don't know what the malfunction is with this team because it's happened under multiple coaches now in multiple seasons where they simply can't seem to get on the board first, establish their game, and then skate teams into oblivion like they probably should. I don't know what it is about this team. 27 out of 49 games they've given up the first goal.
They're sick. Everyone's sick. They all had the flu. Tommy T pointed it out in the chat.
Come.
I'm kidding.
What are we doing here?
I'm kidding.
Do you know how many podcasts I did with the flu? Probably not a lot. Do
you remember that one pod that I was doing that I was barfing while I was on the pod? Right before we went to Ottawa for the All-Star game, and I was wrapped up and was barfing all over the place.
Well, I think it was because I suggested doing a game show, and your body rejected it so much.
Probably.
That you started spewing.
Yeah, but I've turned around on game shows
all over the
equipment. I've turned around. I've turned around on game shows.
I know. The fact that you've done one since we started doing this again yourself.
I'll do another one day.
You've
do another
changed
one
your
one
opinion
day.
on it.
Damn it. A quick thought. Listen, I don't know where JT Miller ends up. It sounds still like Rangers very much in the mix. We should not be surprised at the Carolina Hurricanes, because whenever there's a big name available, the Carolina Hurricanes are around it. As are, by the way, it would not surprise me at all if we found out at some point that the Colorado Avalanche expressed interest. Because there's two teams that I'm always told that whenever there are big names out there, well, Vegas too, but two teams specific, whenever there are big names out there, are always around it. One is Carolina, and the other is Colorado. That would not surprise me, but it does sound like he wants to head east.
And
but
he fits
nonetheless,
snugly into that Colorado lineup, doesn't he?
Yes. In our chat, Rick says, hang on a second here. In our chat, you will like this one. Rick says, Greg would have cross-checked the flu in the face. All right.
I would have.
Good. That is the...
I would have. If it had a hold on me and the flu refs were like, play on, I would have taken my stick and I would have hit and flu right in the face.
Hey, whoa. One
Yeah.
quick question. I want to get this one out there.
Yeah.
I think the answer is he could still play. Jessica L. What if a player is suspended right before the Four Nations Cup? Would the NHL let them play? It is an NHL tournament.
So this is a great question, and I'm happy that you've asked that, because I need
Jessica.
to investigate some other things about this too. I don't know about suspensions. I don't know about. I mean, there's not a trade moratorium, which in theory means that any of the players in this tournament can be traded, which is insane to me. Like, why would you possibly want people focused and tuned into an exhibition tournament if you're these players, if like JT Miller could all of a sudden become a Hurricane in the middle of the tournament? Like, I feel like there should be like protected status for the players in Four Nations. I don't know if you could do that necessarily under the CBA, but it
sending
feels
a note,
right, doesn't it?
I'm just sending a note to find out if we'll see if this comes back here. Jessica, that's a great question.
But the other thing too is, and this is the one I was most curious about, Marek. Are they?
You can
enforcing
play
the All-Star rule.
You can play. Four
You can play
Nations
what?
is isolated. If you're
It's isolated,
suspended, you
okay.
can still play Four Nations.
If you skip Four Nations, do you have to do the All-Star rule and sit out a game? Or more to the point, if you skip Four Nations, do you then have to sit out the next 3 games? Because that's how many games in Four Nations you missed.
As an American, how happy were you to hear all the talk about Connor McDavid should sit out the Four Nations in protest? Conversation last night.
I think it's time for Connor to take a stand. I think he should turn his back on the Four Nations tournament. I think he should encourage other Canadian players to do the same as a McKinnon, Makar, a show of solidarity with brother Connor to not play the Four Nations tournament. I completely agree. It's time to take a stand. No, that's interesting. Yeah, I there's a lot of that Four Nations stuff that I was curious about. I'm glad we cleared up the
one caveat this person mentions is that, you know, if someone did something incredibly egregious outside of just Connor McDavid, you know, ho-hum Saturday night cross-check in the face, yawn, something even more egregious than that, the
something
NHL
more
might
than
have
I
to
hit a guy in the face with my stick who I was wearing as a belt. Yeah, something more than that.
All right, before we wrap here, I'm glad we got Jessica. Great question, and I'm glad we got the answer there for you. Okay, so that is settled.
Is like Bettman in the chat? How did you get that answer so quickly? My God.
Gary Bettman is actually Big Willie Styles. Big Willie Styles in the chat is actually Gary Bettman. Sorry, Commissioner. The mask comes off. Big Willie Styles in the chat. He's also on the Morning Cup of Hockey. It's actually the Commissioner. I'm sorry.
I know it's not.
Sorry, I had to find out like this.
I know it's not Bettman because Big Willie Styles said he liked that I was here. So
okay,
I know that's
very
definitely
good. We have a really quick thought before I wrap up here. Like, you got like 60 hot seconds on Mitch Marner. There's Mitch Marner. There's no question attached to this one, other than, you know, it's another big night for Mitch Marner. Last night, the Maple Leafs beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. I know their power play is impressive, and we'll see more of that tonight. But do you have just a general thought because I'm right in the market as an outsider, like someone that's just watching Mitch Marner. Adam Oates always makes the point, why is it always Mitch has to help people? Why isn't it the Maple Leafs go out and get someone to help Mitch Marner? Why is it always Mitch is helping Willie, Mitch is helping Austin, Mitch is helping John Tavares? Why is it not the other way around? Just have a thought on Mitch Marner, the season that he's having. He's going to put like 115 points on the board.
The fact that Adam Oates said that is so funny.
It's so
because
Adam Oates.
Adam Oates is, if you look up complimentary star in the dictionary, it is a giant picture of Adam Oates.
Adam
And
Oates.
if you look up complimentary, dude, Oates and Hull, Oates and whoever. Oates has always been a player who made other players better, but was not necessarily the guy on the front of the arena on the banner. Wouldn't you agree?
That is true, but you know what? He was one of those guys where all the players that played all talked about how brilliant this guy was, and like, oh man,
I
can you
completely
imagine if
agree.
Adam Oates was my center?
That's why I think it's kind of funny, the idea that Adam Oates, who was the ultimate, we're going to put our guy with Adam Oates to make him better, is like, they should put people around Marner.
Maybe he's just frustrated.
They're very similar in the sense that they're never going to be the guy.
Maybe he was just
they
frustrated.
will be the guy behind the guy.
Frustrated in his career, that it was never like, let's get someone to help Oates. Let's just get like, you know what?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Brett Hull's going to go hide somewhere in the ice half the game, and when he springs free in a scoring position, Adam, make sure he gets the puck.
Make sure he gets the puck. So my take on Marner is this. I first of all, I've always felt that Marner is the type of player that if the Leafs ever let him walk or traded him, he is the type of player that you will be constantly searching for over the next 7 years or 8 years.
Yes.
And again, like that is without question.
Yes.
The other thing too about this is that normally when we see a season like this, and as you identified at the top of the show, a contract year for Marner, it's usually to maximize your earning potential overall. You know, I'm showing the entire league what I'm made of. I got a price tag. Someone will meet it. Look at the season I'm having. But in Marner's case, don't you think it's more about like, I am playing this well, not to justify my price tag, but to justify my place with this franchise in case they have any second thoughts about continuing their relationship with me contractually. Don't you think that's the case?
I don't know if they're having second thoughts about that. I really don't. I honestly,
had coffee. So.
They had coffee at the beginning of the season, like publicly. They wanted everyone to know that they were having.
It's like that scene in Heat.
Cafe.
I had coffee with Mitch Marner half an hour ago.
Okay, we got to hustle, but maybe we'll pick up a Marner conversation next week or another time, because there's probably a lot more deeper things we can talk about with Mitch Marner and the Toronto Maple Leafs and other teams around the NHL. Okay, listen, you have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and we will talk in 7 days, my good man. Your latest piece on the Washington Capitals is available at ESPN.com.
Yeah.
Thanks, bud.
It is. Thanks, everybody.
You be
Take
good.
care.
All right, there he is, Greg Wyshynski from ESPN, MVSW Tuesdays, here every week on the show. And Jessica, great question. I hadn't considered that, Zach, for 1 second. If you're suspended before the Four Nations, does that carry over because it's an NHL tournament? The answer is no, unless it is particularly egregious. I wonder if a cross-check in the face would be considered particularly egregious by the Department of Player Safety. I'm guessing no. Like, do you have to take a skate off and chase someone down the ice? Like, what's particularly... what do you have to do?
Yeah.
How bad does it have to be? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, to Wish's point, well, if it's Connor McDavid, then we can put him aside because he's a different player and he's a different guy, and we can put that in a separate bucket, right?
Right.
Also,
okay. Yes.
Quick thing here, I think Wish said Hall and Oates when he was saying Hull and Oates.
Yeah.
I think he said Hall and Oates. Very, very different partnership there between those two.
Let me
just wanted to
ask
distinguish that.
you something. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much did you hate the Leafs' old Hall & Oates goal song?
I didn't hate it like that much.
Are you serious?
It was time for a new
awful.
one.
It was terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't good,
bad.
but it was like I wasn't scratching my ears off every time it played. I didn't really care anymore. It's just like, whatever, we need a new one, but I wasn't in hatred of it.
Yeah, I didn't like it one bit. All right. Let's get to some of the games tonight because there's one thing that I want to propose to you here that I think you're going to like, and I think fans might find a little bit interesting, and there's some logic behind it as well. So, 8 games on the go around the NHL this evening. Let's recommend you have a peek at a lot of these things and remind you, FanDuel, proud to connect fans to the major sports moments that matter to them, whether it's games, and we'll see Tampa, Montreal, and Ottawa, and New York. That's an interesting game. Elmer Soderblom makes his season debut for the Detroit Red Wings tonight. I'm not going to have time to talk about Soderblom. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow. San Jose, New Jersey, Carolina, Dallas. Maybe a Stanley Cup preview there. Washington, Edmonton, game 1 of the Connorless, the McDavidless Edmonton Oilers. Florida and Anaheim. And also Buffalo and Vancouver. And here's why I want to mention Buffalo and Vancouver. So before we went to air today, I sent you a text and said, can you board this up? And for those not in the industry, that means, can you make a board? Can you make a graphic where you put these words on them? And these words in question were a proposed 3-way trade, okay, between the New Jersey Devils, the Vancouver Canucks, and the Buffalo Sabres. Now, the reason that I bring this up, I don't want to say who the person is that told me this or shared this idea with me, other than I've long believed that this person should be a general manager in the NHL. This is not, with all due respect to everyone who does like call-in radio shows. I can remember Morgan Frost's dad, Andy Frost, who I used to work with at Chorus. He used to do a show called Leaf Talk after every Toronto Maple Leaf game. And when they started letting people on that made trade proposals, it was a whole lot of Alexei Ponikarovsky in a second in exchange for Yevgeny Malkin. So I know that trade talk can be catnip for a lot of people, especially when you start throwing names out. But this one made a lot of sense. Now, the Vancouver Canucks are trying to move a player, but trying to move a player generally to a team that's also a playoff team. Those deals are really hard to make, but what makes them easier, because both teams have their eyes on the playoffs, whether it's the Rangers or in this case the New Jersey Devils, what you need is a third team that has their eyes on not this season, but 2026. Let me know in the chat. Let me know if you're listening to the podcast. Let me know if you're watching on YouTube, either live or in the archive. What do you think of this trade? As I have a little chin scratch about this one, Zach. 3-way deal. Vancouver, Buffalo, and the New Jersey Devils. Vancouver gets Bo Byram, Ryan McLeod, James Reimer. The Buffalo Sabres get, from New Jersey, Simon Nemec, they'll be losing Bo Byram, Dawson Mercer, Tomas Tatar, and the Devils acquire from the Vancouver Canucks JT Miller, with money retained through the Buffalo Sabres. Again, you're going to need a third team here to help facilitate this thing and hold some money, with money retained by the Buffalo Sabres, no lack of cap space there, and also Sam Lafferty to make the deal work. I like it. It makes a lot of sense philosophically. It gives all these teams what they are looking for. Now, the wild card is, of course, JT Miller needs to waive his no-move clause to go to New Jersey. Not sure where that would be at, but he's already indicated he would most likely waive it for the New York Rangers. We are speculating on that. But what do you make of that one? 3 teams getting what they want, and the most important thing is, it's tough when you see 2 teams that are both playoff bound make a trade, because they both are obviously they're on their way to the playoffs. So you can't do trades for green bananas and prospects and picks and these types of things. Your one team is going to weaken themselves in the short term for the long-term benefit. And that's where, if you're moving someone like JT Miller to a playoff contender, you might just need a third team. Does that one make sense to you, Zach Phillips?
Yeah, it does. When you sent this one over and I was putting together the board, this one was a close one that I was looking at. I was like, yeah, you got something here. Laz points out in the chat, thanks to him for joining us here. Dawson Mercer would be the biggest loss. I think that's one of those things where kind of Wish said, and I've had conversations before, you take a big piece out a star player out of a team, it's rare that you get better in or among that trade with the players you get back. This is the best way for each of these teams to help themselves without completely dismantling and depleting their current rosters, I think. I mean, like, thinking about where you're at with the Devils there, okay, you take Dawson Mercer out. Yeah, that hurts you right now, but Tatar, you could upgrade on and probably looking to upgrade on anyways. Simon Nemec is not playing right now. Dawson Mercer is that piece. Then for the Canucks, I mean, you rid yourself of JT Miller and you get back some guys who can help you today and next year and going forward if you can sign them to extensions. Like, it just seems to kind of make sense. And for the Sabres, Jeff, the conversation that we've had continuously has been, are you panicked to make, or not panicked, are you worried about making a trade because you're going to lose the trade? I don't think you worry about that here. Like, you're moving on from Byram, McLeod, Reimer. I don't think losing any of those pieces makes you go, oh my God, how did we lose that guy?
Yeah, because you're going to have to re-sign Byram at a big ticket, or he's going to kill you in arbitration. One way or the other, you're going to pay for Bo Byram. Anyway, we throw that out there on a Tuesday afternoon as a way just to sort of wrap your head around. It's going to be tough for the Vancouver Canucks to trade JT Miller to a team that wants to contend, because it's got to be quality for quality. That's sometimes where a third party can come in. So that one makes a lot of sense, I think. Anyway, and again. That comes from someone, again, who I believe should be an NHL general manager. Anyhow, thanks to Greg Wyshynski for stopping by. Zach, there are a few things we didn't get to. Welcome to the program. We'll try to clean those up tomorrow, including, don't let me forget about Elmer Soderblom. So we're going to see the Detroit Red Wings tonight. I want to make a stupid point, because you know me. I want to make a stupid point about him tomorrow. He's huge, folks. You can't miss him. He's a 6'8" left winger. They don't make a whole lot of those. You can see him tonight for the Detroit Red Wings, making his season debut.
Hey, Jeff, by the way,
yes.
As we wrap up here, and I know we got to go, we put a poll in the chat, thoughts on the McDavid suspension.
Oh, yeah.
You and Greg argued about 2 versus 3. Well, chat 40% at 3 is the right number, 41% at should have been 1 to 2. 5% said should have been 0, and 14% should have been 4+ games. So between the 2 and the 3, we were like button heads there.
All right.
Yeah.
I
also want to throw something quick out.
Yeah.
People look at these stars in other leagues. This is one thing I'm seeing. Oh, the NFL protects their stars. The NBA protects their stars. They call fouls and throw flags.
Yeah.
NFL, NBA, it's common. Be careful what you wish for. Watch those products. Hear what former players say, current players, analysts, etc. Even fans. People don't like it. People do not like it. It's a slippery slope. Once you start doing that, and every time LeBron's elbow gets tickled, there's going to the free throw line. People lose their minds. Like, it makes the product less enjoyable. And also remember here, ladies and gentlemen, it's hockey. Like, this is part of the game. It happens. Yes, I understand protecting your stars, but let's not get ridiculous here and start looking at those examples in which people in those leagues already do not like the way that stuff is officiated and think it's overdone. Like, all I want to say here at the end, just be careful, because it can get messy quickly.
That's really good. Like, I'm a hockey fan. Like, that's, if it wasn't for hockey, like, I wouldn't, like, I'd probably be a pretty big baseball fan, but like my knowledge of like football and basketball, like, honestly, when I hear you start talking about, football, for example, like I was saying last week, I like what I like to refer to as Portuguese. I understand, like, the words kind of sound right and all that, but it's a completely different language to me. I don't know, like, oh, you put those words in that order and who's that person? And I'm like, I think I can understand this conversation. Yeah, I'm not like not a huge football fan, not a huge basketball fan. I like watching them. I'll go live. That'll be cool. Not a fan of golf. I've told you before, Zach, the best 2 balls I hit is when I step on a rake. You know that. Not a fan of playing it. You like that one? Not a fan of watching it.
Yeah, that's good.
I just like the greens, though. They're nice and relaxing on the eyes. Anyhow, on behalf of Zach, Marek signing off with the chip behind me and great chat as well. Love it. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. We're back tomorrow. We're going to talk to Andrew Brewer. Andrew Brewer is a video coach. Andrew Brewer is responsible for the first Coaches Challenge in the NHL. and we're going to talk to him about the life, like a day in the life of a video coach. Piper Shaw's got a great Seattle Kraken analyst. Piper Shaw did a great piece. You can find the Seattle Kraken have it linked on a sort of night in the life of video coaches, and use the Nashville Predators game from not too long ago as a touch point for this. It's a great piece. I retweeted it today. Have a look. Piper's awesome. She does tremendous work. I really encourage you to look at that. And so I watched it this morning over a cup of coffee when I got up and said, you know what? I got to get Brewer on to talk more about this, like what it is actually like. And we'll go through the genesis of the first coaches challenge. The Canets on Bernier, 2015, Toronto, Montreal, and plenty more tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining me today. We're back tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific. More of the sheet tomorrow. Adjourned. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.